Hello, friends of Herbie, and welcome to this new episode of the Campfire Talks with Herbie. As you see, we have an unusual time. It is much earlier than usual because our guest today is in another time zone. So, for everyone's convenience, we do it now. It is like 3 o'clock Central European time. Before introducing you to our guest, I want to bring in a face you have already seen. We have with me Mark from Denmark, also known as Question Mark. And
Yes.
Hello, Question Mark. How are you?
Hello. I'm great, Steve. Thank you.
And the reason Mark is here is because he brought us this guest, and I love this that the TameFlow network is involving more and more people from all sorts of backgrounds and experiences. So thank you, Mark, for being like the diplomatic intermediary here. And I will now go on to introduce you to our guest who is in Jakarta and is Dr. Paul Giammalvo. Hello, Paul. Welcome to this show. What time is it there for you now?
It's 9 o'clock. 9 o'clock. I'm sorry, 8 o'clock at night.
8 o'clock at night.
On what is it? Tuesday night. 8 o'clock Tuesday night. Yeah.
Okay. So you are a few hours ahead of us, and that's why we are using this unusual time for the campfire talk. So as usual, we'll go through this interview, then we'll have some comments of mine, and then we'll have further conversations. And of course, we will also have Mark, who I am sure, knowing him, he will ask questions and make comments as well. And we also have the comments from the YouTube channel. So if you're in the audience and want to ask something or reflect on something, just use the commenting function and we will capture that. So let's see. Are we ready? I think we are having a headset problem there. Are you okay, Paul?
Okay.
Great.
Battery just died.
Let's start this. So let's start. Who are you?
Yes. Fine, thank you. And yourself?
Very good. Very good.
Oh, thanks. Nice to meet you, Steve. I've known Mark for a couple of weeks, I guess, or maybe even a couple of months. But first time I actually got to meet you, Steve.
Actually, Paul, I know you since many years through some LinkedIn conversations or exchanges. I don't think we were actually conversing directly, but we were on the same thread. So I remembered your name there. So now, tell us something about you. Who are you? Where are you? What are you doing?
Well, first of all, I'm not an academic. I am a practitioner. I came up through the trades, construction management. I started out as an apprentice carpenter and became a journeyman carpenter and a master carpenter and a general contractor. For 30 years, I was a building contractor. And at some point in my I don't know, my late 40s, my wife and I looked at this and said, what's going on here? The margins are very slim. Normally, contractors are working on single-digit EBIT margins, and the projects became. I mean, the business climate in the USA became much more litigious, and every time you did a project, you were betting your entire life savings on the next project. And my wife and I looked at it and said, this is craziness. For the kind of returns we're getting, better we get out of the construction business and get into the consulting business. Consulting business is very low risk, and actually the margins are quite respectable. So I became a Primavera dealer. Okay. And that was okay. The thing is back in those days.
Hold on a second. Maybe folks here don't know what Primavera dealer is. What was that?
Oh, Primavera is a scheduling software, very, very popular in construction. Certainly, not so much in the IT sector, but heavy construction uses probably the much maybe 10 times more frequent use than Microsoft Project. Construction doesn't use Microsoft Project too much. They mostly use Primavera. Okay. So
it's a project management software.
Oh yeah. My entire background is project management from the time I started in the trades, and worth mentioning is that back in for literally thousands of years, construction project managers came up to the trades. There was no PMI. There was none of these organizations. You either came up through the masonry trades, and if you look at all the cathedrals in Europe or the pyramids, those were all done by masons, or they were done by carpenters. So that was the original way you became a construction project manager, was through the trade route, either masonry or carpentry. And when I was young, in the 50s and 60s, the transition started to go from coming up through the trades to having a degree. Then they wanted to have engineers. So I was right in that 1960, 1970 time frame when they were going from becoming a project manager by working your way up through the trades to going to school and getting an engineering degree. So I was caught in this transition. So I was already in the trades, and I was by that time I was a journeyman or a master carpenter, and so I just went to school nights, and then I ended up with both the trade end of it and the academic end of it. So I'm a very unusual character from that perspective. Today, almost everybody you see, has a degree in engineering, and they may have worked in the field, but very few of them have trade experience. And that influences a lot of my opinions and a lot of my perspectives. And I have the tendency on LinkedIn to be very, very short with people who think that they're subject matter experts, but really don't know shit. Oops. Can I say that on YouTube? Maybe not. Anyway.
Well, it's gone.
they're really not confident. They've seen it, but they've never done it. And there's a big difference between watching somebody else do something and you doing it yourself. Okay, especially when you start to get into problem areas like working in the mud, or working in wet weather, or working in extreme heat. When you start to work in those less than ideal conditions, the productivity drops off exponentially. And unless you've had the trade experience coming up through it, it's very difficult to estimate time and estimate it correctly. So one of my big bitches is with schedulers creating CPM schedules. Okay, if you Mark, if you looked at any of my recent postings on LinkedIn, I've had a couple of big battles with people that think that the scheduler should be creating the schedule. And I'll tell you, when we see these some guy, usually a guy, but more and more frequently we're seeing women, just as bad, We see them sitting in some nice air-conditioned office, looking at some schedule of productivity schedules, and they're putting together these schedules. And those of us in the field get these schedules, and we look at them and we laugh at them. What are these people smoking back in the home office? They have no clue what's going on. So this is one of the reasons why we have so many projects that finish late and over budget.
So they are detached from reality.
There's a never-ending supply of totally detached from reality. Not just a little bit, but orders of magnitude, 200%, 300% in some cases. So it's really not too pretty out there. And we know this, and we keep telling them, these you can't go by these productivity tables that they show you in the book. So what I do when I go out on consulting, I go to the field, and I find the field people, and I say, we go out to the site, we look at the site. Okay, it's funny because I just get done with a consultancy in Kuwait. We go out to the field, and it's 45 degrees out there. Okay, with a wind blowing, with all kinds of dust in the air, and we're saying to the workers, how productive are you? They say, oh, we're about 50% productive in this weather than we are in better weather. So these are the kinds of reality that you have in the schedule. Okay, and the only way to find that out is by going to the field and talking to the people who are going to do the work. So one of my number one rules is project schedules and project cost estimates should never be created by people in the office. They should be created by people who are going to be doing the work. Okay, now, if this applies for construction, the question is, what does that imply for people that work in office projects? IT projects. I don't do programming, so I can't tell you. But my guess is that the same rules apply. That if you go and talk to the people who are going to do the work,
I can confirm.
Those are the people.
I can confirm that to you, because my background is primarily. If you go back to the Stone Age of the field, I was a software engineer in a previous life, in a previous millennium. So I can relate to that because today we see a lot of Scrum Masters and Agile coaches who do not have any hands-on experience. So the way they approach how to manage these projects, these endeavors, very often are, as you said, detached, amply detached from reality. So even if the field is different and is, of course, intangible, immaterial, the same sort of mechanism we see it, we witness it even here. But okay, let's maybe get to know you a bit.
I want to bring up one other point while I've got that. This is one of my big issues, is that I don't think there's a whole lot of difference between project management in construction and project management in IT. Everybody, we do things differently, or this was not invented here. But you just confirmed what I believe is that it's about people. It's nothing to do with software or tools and techniques. It's got to do with people skills. And I have no clue about your business as a software engineer. Okay? And you probably have no clue about installing pipelines. But the same principles apply. Is if you want to find out what's going on, ask the people who are going to do the work. Ask the people who have done the work before. So that's a major takeaway for your framework here.
Yeah, I think the people ingredient, or the wetware, as we call them in this industry, those who actually sweat, are a major component in all sorts of, let's say, determining success factors, whether you call them project success, delivery success, business success. At the end, it is pretty much a matter of people. In fact, one of the, I don't know if Mark told you, but TameFlow is called like that, TameFlow, because we are looking at 4 flows: the operational, the financial, the informational, and the psychological flow. So the psychological flow is exactly this. Now, how do you take into account the fact that anything we do is conducted by people, and by how these people interact between one and the other. Yeah. So tell me something more. I mean, well, one of the question was here, how did you get involved with this sector? But you more or less replied. And there is also a part about TameFlow, but I know you were just introduced to TameFlow by Mark. So I'm more curious to know, what are you doing on a daily basis? How do you do your living? What are you doing today?
Well, now that COVID is here, okay, I mostly do training. Okay, prior to COVID, about 50% of our revenue was from consulting. And because my background is cost estimating, scheduling, or what you call PMO, what we call project controls. That's the essence of project management. Okay, is what you call a PMO. The risk management, the cost estimating, the scheduling, the contracts, the resource allocation, the resource productivity. All that stuff is the essence of project management, and I think that applies to IT as well as it applies to construction. Okay, you guys continuously run late and over budget, and all of our projects run late and over budget. So I'm strongly suspicious that the root cause problems are identical to both applications. Different people, different problems, but the same basic root cause for being late and over budget. Okay.
Yeah, that's probably something you would recognize in the like pre-agile era, where this idea of missing budgets and deadlines was prevalent. But there are aspects there which maybe we get back to later when we have our deepening discussions. But what is your typical day? Now, how do you spend your time apart from the professional side? How do you enjoy life?
Sitting right here in front of my computer. Because we do a lot with the Middle East, so that means that Sunday is a work day for me. So I like fishing and I like scuba diving. So one of the reasons I live here in Indonesia, I've been here now. It's I'm in my 29th year here. So whenever I get sick of working, or whenever I have a free time, I go fishing or I go scuba diving. So that's mostly what I do. And I'm almost 4 years ago, my wife died of cancer, so I don't have a wife. So this my man cave here is my life.
Well, right now I think many of us are like caved in because of the COVID and everything. And what makes you happy at the end of the day?
As my number 2 daughter tells me, she calls me excessively happy. Okay, I'm a happy guy. I love life. I absolutely love what I'm doing. Okay, and I can't think of anything else that I'd like to be doing. I don't like golf, so that's out. And I play tennis 2-3 times a week, but that's only an hour and a half or so. So most of the day is spent exactly where I am right now, in front of the computer, talking to our clients or talking to our students.
So we've all been turned into basically computer gamers here, 24/7 in front of the screen, right? But in this long career of yours, now what are some of the skills or insights that you have developed by being involved in the industry for so long?
Can we postpone that question as we get into it? I'll go over some of the other slides that we have. Okay.
Yeah, I know you wanted to show something, and I have brought this up.
Can you go to the second, not my slide, but the one we were working on before?
Yeah, the pyramid one, the integrated asset one. Yeah, let's see. This one?
Yeah. That's the one. Yep, that one right there.
So tell us.
That's essentially. That's the model that I believe is the one that we know for a fact has worked. It worked on the pyramids. It worked on the cathedrals in Europe. It worked on the Burj Khalifa. It works on the oil and gas projects we work on. And the big question is how can we get our IT people and government people on board with this model? Okay, in this particular model, it starts out with it's an asset-centric model. Now, this model dates back way before PMI to Esso oil or diamond shamrock oil back in 1955. Now, it goes back before this. Okay, but diamond shamrock or Esso were the ones that actually came up with an asset-centric model. And right now, this is what kills me, is everybody's talking about Waterfall and Agile and Scrum. They're all asset delivery models. Forget the fact that they're project management. They're asset delivery. When you go up one level higher and start to recognize that all of these are asset delivery models, starting with operations. On the left-hand side is operations management, okay? And on the right-hand side, extreme right-hand side is, well, as you're looking at it face on, the extreme right is agile, the different agile, and then there's different models in between, okay? Once you accept this concept, which means you have to integrate ISO 55000 with ISO 21500, when you integrate these two together into one model,
can you tell the audience? Can you tell the audience what those ISO standards are actually?
ISO 55000 is asset management, and ISO 21500 is project management, and then somewhere, I don't know, ISO 21350 or something like that, or 250 is program management. But in my perspective, we don't have to separate out program management from project management, because programs are just a group of projects. That's all. Okay. So I don't use PMI's definition. I use GAP's definition of programs, which covers any either large projects or maintenance projects, operations projects. It covers all of those. Okay, but the big part is, if you look at the left-hand side, the part that's missing, that everybody's missing right now, is it takes assets to create assets. Okay, one of the problems we're trying to do, we're trying to undertake too many projects, and we don't have enough resources for them. Our resources are stretched too thin. This is why, because we don't match up the portfolio of available assets or assets and resources, the same term. They're synonymous. We don't have enough resources, assets, to apply to the projects that we're trying to do. So that means everybody's stretched too thin. So that's one of the core truths, is if you don't have enough assets, if you don't have enough resources, you can't do all of these projects that our organizations are trying to do. It's
so you should do less of
common
them.
sense. I can't believe that people. Yeah. Well, we call it triage. There are certain projects that you have to be able to say, look, this is a nice project, and if we had more resources, we could apply to it. So in other words, you cannot or you should not start a project if you don't have the resources to start it. Don't even start it. The question is who's responsible to make that decision? Okay, because everybody's like, oh, my project is top priority. It doesn't matter where you go. The only one who gets away with it full time is the CEO. Okay, he can get to pick and choose whatever projects he wants. But as you get further down the pecking order in the hierarchy, the chain of command, people start fighting, and then everybody say, well, my project's more important than your project. So we have to have a way of really prioritizing the projects. And from my perspective, okay, I'm a big numbers person. I like to quantify it. I want to see what the internal rate of return is, what the benefit cost ratio is. I want to see what the numbers are. And then based on what the numbers are, then we can say, okay, this is a nice project, but I'm sorry, we just don't have the resources to do it. We're going to have to put it off into the future sometime. So yeah, we have to cut down the number of projects, or we have to increase the number of resources. I don't really care from management perspective. If you insist we must do the project, then we have to bring on more resources, either through insourcing or outsourcing or subcontracting or whatever the method. But if you don't have the resources, you can't do the projects. Simple as that.
Yeah, that's no. You said a few things which resonates even with TameFlow Approach. We do look a lot at numbers. Maybe not the same numbers, but it's that notion that unless you quantify something, well, basically you're just guessing. And also the role of the CEO, I think you highlighted, is a key element, because unless we have the full support from the very top, I'm convinced no change management or like these prioritization battles that you mentioned will ever get done or resolved. Mm-hmm. So that's interesting, and I find it also interesting in this slide that the dimension where you distinguish, like, from operations to agile is the definition of scope and objectives from very high to very low or / unknown, and the tolerance
go to the next
change.
Slide. Go to the next slide, and I've blown that up.
Let's see. I think I have it here.
The next slide is blown up.
The asset delivery one, yeah?
Yeah, yep,
this
the asset
one.
Delivery one.
Yeah, yep. So there you see it.
Yep, yeah, that's a little bit bigger, a little bit easier to read, okay? Now, this is another one I'm looking at, and it's absolute common sense to me. I don't understand why people are struggling with this concept, except that they refuse to look at it as an asset delivery. So as a company, as an organization, I want to create assets. First of all, projects do not deliver benefit. That is an absolute falsehood. Projects create assets. Assets produce value. Okay? So there's a step missing in there that everybody misses right now. The agile people all seem to miss this. They say, well, projects produce benefits, not unless you're a contractor. If I'm a contractor and I do a project, the benefit is hopefully profit. But for an owner organization, they do projects to create some kind of an asset, a knowledge asset, a physical asset, an intangible asset. Software is intangible, a human asset, okay, or a financial asset. And it is the asset that produces value. So right now, most of the agile models are broken because they're going directly from the project to the value added, to the benefits. There's a step missing in there. Okay? So what happens is the project is undertaken to create an asset. The asset is then put into operation, and the asset produces benefit, we hope. The asset produces benefit. Okay? But you can't miss that one step in the middle. So what happens is any organization has a choice, a whole spectrum of choices they can pick from to create assets. Now, the most common is operations, especially in the oil, gas, mining sector, where is mostly where I work. The asset is oil. They do projects. Projects are an essential part of oil and gas and mining, but the project only serves to help to get the oil out of the ground, to get the gold out of the ground, and then they sell the gold, and that's or the oil, and that's what generates the asset for them. Okay, the project is only the delivery method. So the first one is operations. Okay. And in the operation environment, the scope is very, very well defined. There's hardly any changes to it. We have the specifications, and the whole idea of operations is that every product that you produce is identical to the one before it. Okay? And the tolerance for change is zero. If they're gonna change the formula for the oil, or if they're gonna change the mining process, they have to shut down the operation and make some changes to it, and then start up with a new operation. So operations is how most companies are working. Most owner organizations, that's how they generate their revenue. Oil, gas, mining. It's an operational centric model, and that's how Esso or Diamond Shamrock invented the model back in 1955. It was an asset-centric model. Then we go into what we call projectized operations. This by far is the most predominant method. It's the most advanced, okay? Every doctor, every lawyer, every engineer, every school teacher is using what we call projectized operations, okay? For us, every consultancy is a standalone project. Every class we teach is a standalone project. For a lawyer, every case is a standalone project, all right? For an accountant, every year when they do your taxes, that's a standalone project. Every auto mechanic, every carpenter, every electrician, most of our business is formulated around doing projects. Now, in some cases, we may have appointments. Okay, so like a dentist or a doctor, you make an appointment, you go in for the appointment. But many of them, like a barber or an auto mechanic, you have walk-ins, and you never know when the next person walking in exactly what their project's going to be. Okay, the dentist walks in, oh, I need a tooth cleaning, and I got a cavity here that needs to be filled. So the scope of the work changes all the time, but every time a new client walks through the door, it's a new project.
So I think this classification makes a lot of sense in TameFlow. I don't know if you've had an opportunity to discover this, but we have this notion which I call the MOVE. It's actually an acronym that I identify as the minimal outcome value effort. So it is what you have to put in order to get something out, expressed in very crude terms. But in the intangible world, the identification of an asset is also quite challenging, because it's by definition you cannot really see it or touch it. At times you can experience it. It becomes like an experiential element. So
let me get to the right. Let me get to the right, and I'll talk about I'm not just halfway through it here.
Okay.
In the middle, we have the traditional waterfall, classic project management. Most of your big construction projects are like that. They're not a professional services. It's a factory, or it's a major project. Okay, and then we start to get into the fuzzy areas. Okay, the next one we have in construction is this middle one, what we call integrated project management. It's what you call agile applied to construction. Been around since about 1975, 1980, somewhere around in there. Okay, where mostly done by architects and engineers, where the client doesn't know what they want. They know they want a hotel. They don't know how big it is. They don't know where it's going to be. There's a lot of things, a lot of fuzzy areas in there. So now we have to work with the client to actually help them define what it is they want. Okay? Once we define it, then we can start to design it, and then we can start to get into traditional construction, into waterfall. But until the project is actually designed, we don't know exactly what we want to do. Okay? Then we get into what you're calling agile, pure agile. We walk in, actually a good example of this, perfect example, is the COVID vaccine. We know we want a vaccine, but there must be 50 different ways we can produce a vaccine for a virus. Okay? Russia's doing a couple different experiments. We're doing some. China's doing some. So this is very much an experimental kind of situation where we have a vague idea what we're looking for, but we don't know how or what it's going to look like or what the process is, what the costs are going to be. So this is the world of intangible deliverables. We don't exactly know what we want. We've got an idea, but in some cases we don't even have an idea what we want. We want to, what is it? Trump just said he wants to put a colony on the moon, and he wants to land people on Mars. I mean, that's a pretty broad scope of work to be trying to plan something around. So that's the world of agile. So what I'm saying to people is it's not an either or question. It's just a question of deciding, how do we know what the objective is, okay? And how tolerant are people to accept change, okay? I don't know. Maybe by the time Trump's out of office, we'll be going to Uranus or something. I don't know what's going to happen, but we don't know the future on those things, okay?
Well, for extended space travel, probably that's a good guess. I think that this spectrum of different kinds of projects, or as you say, their asset delivery
It's a
methodologies,
delivery system, yeah.
is quite spot on. Though I think there are some dimensions when we go in the agile intangible space, which has nothing to do with agile actually, but something that maybe I will get back to later. But I have some further questions. I'm curious about Paul. You know, how do you see, or what's your sense of TameFlow in this spectrum? I don't know how much you know about TameFlow, but I'm sure Mark must have given you some insight. Maybe Mark wants to comment. I don't know.
I've
Look,
only
I've read what other people have written about it.
Okay, so let's see maybe something else. What's in your career? Now, what are the most important skills or insights that you have developed during the years?
Really? Okay, go. Can you go to? Let's see. Go to the ones that show the root cause problems. The slide that shows the root cause problems. And I think this ties into.
I'm searching for its fundamental truth. Here it is.
Yeah, from Butts and
this one
and NASA. Yeah, that one right there. That's guys. We've been doing project management for 300,000 years. Okay, the first agile, in my opinion, the first agile was the trial and error method used by the Neanderthals 300,000 years ago to tame fire. It's a trial and error method. We tried something, it didn't work. We tried something else, and this one worked a little bit better. So that is what I consider to be the roots of agile. It's a trial and error method. Okay, and then around the 12th century, instead of being sort of randomized or ad hoc, we started to put structure around it, and it became known as the scientific method. And for 1,000 years, the scientific method has been delivering new products and new services to humans for all that time. And now all of a sudden, back in 1980 or whenever, the IT people, because they don't do research on history, they discovered what they called agile. And if you look at it, agile is nothing more than the scientific method. Couple little tweaks here and there, but it's basically the same thing. So what we're finding out here is that these truths that Glenn Butts and Bent Flivberg have come up with, these are human failings that go back 6,000 years, 300,000 years. Okay? Omit probable scope. Now, in agile, you don't know the scope. Okay, we know we don't know it, so we have one of the challenges is to define it. We have to define it, and we have to define it step by step. Okay, omit possible risks. We do a lousy job on risk analysis, and humans are naturally optimistic, but our optimism bias is what kills us. That's the first example I gave you about the scheduler sitting in some nice home, some nice cushy office, trying to figure out how long it's going to take to dig the trench. Doesn't realize it's 45 degrees out and there's a sandstorm. Okay, so they have no clue what the reality is. Okay, unrealistic and overly optimistic assumptions, and this applies It applies to construction. It applies to IT. It applies to every single project we look at. It's the same root cause problems. Okay. Historically low escalation. Okay. Now this has not been so bad the last maybe 6 or 8 years. The inflation has been pretty stable, but for much of my life, we've had double-digit inflation. So how can you now see, for construction, most of our jobs are around 3 to 5 years concept to completion. Okay. So in 3 to 5 years, you might have 15-20% inflation. You cannot bid a project based on today's money. You have to look into the future and base it on tomorrow's money, not today's money, when you budget for it. Okay. Not performed by qualified estimators, project managers. It kills me, absolutely kills me, to see the PMP and these other exam-based credentials, including the many of the agile credentials. You sit down, you take a 35-hour course, you pass a multiple choice exam, and poof, you're a project management professional. Bullshit! It's absolute crap. Okay,
and you haven't seen the Scrum Masters.
I've seen the Scrum Masters. It's the same shit. Okay, they're scams, is what they are. To become a competent project manager, construction project manager, on any project of any size, you're 45, 50 years old. You don't see this given to some 22 or 23-year-old computer jockey. Okay. You've got to have a lot of years experience behind you before you can become a project manager on a major project. Okay. And this is another joke that I see, and it's obvious, or it should be obvious, and yet we continue to hire PMPs, although I just saw some interesting data. The PMP is dropping off dramatically. Only 3 or 4% year-on-year growth. Well, I was a little shocked to see that. That's why PMI is panicking right now, I think. Okay, and the same thing with
listen, Paul. Sorry to interrupt you, Paul, but we are starting to run a little short of time.
Okay.
But I know you. You had some questions for me as well. And by the way, if you're skipping some questions here, the audience can always catch up with the blog post that will be published later today. So maybe I'll let Mark introduce this point. You wanted to ask me something, but Mark was the intermediary here. How do we get to this point, Mark?
Well, I think it's in the wasn't it in the questions? You had some questions related to. I think you had some questions, Paul, related to TameFlow and how it's potentially different from all the agile frameworks and whatnot out there. I think Steve calls TameFlow an approach and not a framework and not a methodology. So you had some questions related to how this is different. What is this TameFlow about? Is that correct?
Well, I didn't have any right now. I had there's some slides on the principles. There's 2 sets of principles. Some of them were the same as TameFlow, and some of them were different.
Principles. Let me find them.
There's Henry Fayol and Kelly Johnson from Skunkworks.
Okay, I found the Fayol. Let me see.
Okay, yeah, Fayol. Yeah, you put Fayol up first, and then.
I think it's here. It's coming. There you go.
Okay, it's coming. Yeah, Henry Fayol. Okay. I've been involved with this because I fight with PMI all the time. They're coming up with, they're changing their PMBOK guide 7th edition to a principle based. And this Henry Fayol goes back to the late 1800s, early 1900s. He's a French mining engineer. And these principles are just as valid today as they were back then. Okay, and I sort of compared this to TameFlow, and it looks to me like you've picked up some of them, but not all of them. So my challenge to you would be not to reinvent the wheel. Go back and do the research necessary to find out what others have done before you, and then you may want to adjust your TameFlow. Because a lot of the things that are in here, we violate today. Okay, we all work in a matrix organization, which you cannot serve more than one master at the same time. It doesn't work. So we have to find one master to serve. So this goes back to the Old Testament. Okay, they taught us this, and yet today you're trying. Project managers are working for 15 people at the same time, and then we wonder why we burn them out, why they don't succeed. Okay, somebody needs to be put in charge. Okay, and they got to be empowered to make decisions, and then right or wrong, the decision sticks. Okay, now whoever, I don't know where the decision has to be made, whether it has to be made at the C level or next level down. I guess it depends on the size and the complexity. There's a lot of variables in there, but there has to be one person in charge, one person who makes the decisions. Okay, the buck stops here. Okay, and that person makes all the decisions, and it's funny because everybody hates Trump so much, but the guy's not afraid to make a decision. Okay, and you may not like his decisions, but he's not afraid to make a decision, and that's how he's able to get so many things done. Okay, and then
so Paul,
the other one.
Sorry to interrupt, but we are really running out of time. I mean, you've done an excellent presentation of many relevant things, but I think we need to maybe draw some conclusion. And what you said about Fayol is very interesting. I'm familiar with his work, and I think it was very relevant at the time. Some of these principles I don't think are applicable in the modern world, where we are going more and more towards decentralized decision-making structures. I know it might be like a clash of perspectives, but I am deep into these elements of networks of individuals that communicate and interact as a social body in order to make decisions. Unity of command, I think, is unity of command and unity of direction are encompassed by the notion of unity of purpose that I have clearly spelled out in TameFlow, which I think is more powerful because it relates directly to the intrinsic motivation of people that share a purpose, and I use the notion of inspired leadership, where the point is that as knowledge work becomes more and more complex, as it is doing today, it's very difficult to have one person who can make overarching decisions. This is the reason why decentralized decision making becomes so important, and we have the delegation of decision making to those who have the skill and knowledge. It's a bit like the complaint that you did at the beginning, that you have maybe these project managers in the office who are detached from reality. Today, that reality is multifaceted. So any organization that has to deal with all these different facets has to delegate decision making to those who are skilled and experienced in those respective fields. But this also means that these folks have to step up to a leadership role. So they have to exercise leadership in that context where their decision is relevant and required. So the chain of command is being replaced by a network of competencies, and I think that's the major difference that we are witnessing in today's organizations.
Steve, I have a question. This is where my question comes in. Is it working? That's the big question. You know, what you're saying makes a lot of sense. It sounds nice, but I just don't see it working. What you end up with is management by committee, okay? And you end up with like the seven blind men describing the elephant. You need to have somebody at the top that has the big picture. And that's
so what we do
model.
in TameFlow is that no, we do not go away from let's say the formal hierarchies. Why? Because they are also needed from a legal perspective, from a legal point of view. The CEO is there for a legal reason and has the ultimate responsibility. So we do see, so I'm not talking about Agile, because don't make the mistake of equating TameFlow with Agile. TameFlow is something different. So we do see the necessity of having overarching tie-breaker decision-making when I make the distinction of something that is in within your control, so your span of control, and what is instead in your sphere of influence. And as long as something is in your span of control, because it's knowledge work and you are competent, you're probably more competent than your boss, it's your duty to make that decision. But this does not mean that we should end up, because we have multiple people, it's the base of the pyramid, the formal pyramid, is larger than the top. So that's where you have the phenomenon you explained of the pyramids, of the committees. We don't want paralysis by analysis of these committees. So what we do in TameFlow is that we are enabling quick and fast feedback loops. And when anyone gets stuck in this sort of situation, the situation gets unlocked and there is an escalation to the person that has control over all debating parties. So there can be a quick resolution of any such situations. And there, of course, you demand to the decision that is made above. Now, when this starts to work, what you also will witness, and that's not a thing that you will see in Agile, is that these quote committees or groups of people that have to make decisions together will start to collaborate much quicker. And of course, we give them the tools to understand what is it that matters. You said very well at the beginning that we have the situation where if you ask anyone who's involved in a project which project should go first, everyone will say my project is more important than everyone else's. And you said rightly, we use metrics to make decisions, economic-based decisions. That's exactly the same kind of thing we're doing in TameFlow. We're looking at some different numbers, but nonetheless, powerful economic decisions are being made. So the people on the ground are trained in making these decisions, and they will collaborate much more and arrive at those decisions much quicker and often unanimously. So without lots of debate, they know what matters and they get to the point very quickly. In those few instances, which are always shrinking and become less and less, where there are conflicting views that cannot be resolved there and then that's when you have the escalation. So we're working a lot on the information flow from top to bottom in the organization, and make sure that the feedback loops there are very tight and very, very fast. So the power of TameFlow is really that it enables very fast decision making at all levels in the organization. But you know what, Paul? We are breaking the hour here, and because it's in the middle of the day for many of us here in Europe, we have other meetings coming up. So I just want to thank you for all this valuable insight that you gave us, and a different perspective from what we usually have in the Campfire talks. And it just goes to show that there is a continuum, like historically from what did you say, 350,000 years ago, when humankind's history began, to all these different kinds of project endeavors. There are a few aspects about the IT and software world which I think you have not really captured. There are some other dimensions which we might explore at some other opportunity. But so far, this has been great insights. So I will first ask a few concluding words from Mark that has not said a lot, and then a last few words from you, Mark.
Yes. First of all, thank you for joining, Paul. I think it was very interesting because I've witnessed some of the dialogues going on social media where you have maybe for some radical views. But I think that what is interesting is whether or not we're talking about asset management, if we call it that, or whatever, project management, portfolio management, whatever we want to call it. I think what is interesting is that we have some of the same issues or problems, or probably root causes, as you alluded to, is probably something to do with humans interactions, and we struggle with that all over, I think. So well, thank you for coming. I found it very interesting also that you point back to old, or not old, but management practices of past times, which are still relevant.
Thank you for that insight, Mark, and your last concluding brief words, Paul.
Thanks for inviting me. It was a lot of fun. Guess that's about it. We're running late,
okay.
So bye-bye.
Good. So I remove this, and I welcome all audience to come to the next Campfire Talks, which will be in a week's time. So thank you, everyone. Till next time. Goodbye.